Good day. I'm Liesl Pretorius, Head of Legal with Freedom of Religion South Africa, and joining me today is my colleague Michael Swain, 4SA's Executive Director. In this discussion, we'll be talking about about a recent meeting that took place between 4SA and a coalition of senior religious leaders representing millions of South Africans of diverse faith backgrounds with the new Minister of Basic Education. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss the controversial Early Childhood Education, or ECE Toolkit, which is a teacher training program that introduces transgender ideology into the classroom for children aged 0 to 9 years. So, Michael, to start us off, welcome. And could you tell us more about the ECE Toolkit and where it comes from?
Yeah, thank you, Liesl. I think just to give a little bit of background and context, this ECE Toolkit, ECE stands for Early Childhood Education Toolkit. And this is a teacher training toolkit that was developed by a unit within the Department of Basic Education called the Social Equity and Inclusion in Education Directorate. And they work with the University of Stellenbosch. It was significantly financed by an international Belgian-based organization called VVOB. And essentially what it does is it teaches teachers to basically introduce this transgender culture into pre-primary and primary schools. So we're talking about little children here, sort of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, when obviously they are at their most formative stage. And it teaches them, for example, that they must ask these little children when they come to school, what's your preferred name? What's your preferred pronoun? What toilets would you like to use? The teachers are being trained to no longer use he, she pronouns, for example, only to use they, them, with the purpose of demonstrating to little children that you cannot tell whether somebody is a boy or a girl or a man or a woman simply by looking at them. And they're also going to be telling children, which is, again, very, very concerning, that if you have been told by your mum and dad that there are only men and women, that is actually harmful to you and potentially holding you back in life. So we obviously have deep concerns, but maybe you could just outline a little bit more detail, Liesl, why the coalition is concerned about this, particularly from a legal point of view.
Yes, well, from a legal point of view, Michael, South African public schools are under a legal obligation to be ideologically neutral, which means that it doesn't mean that you can't have worldviews or ideology or religion in the public education sector. It just means that different views should be treated even-handedly. And you cannot marginalize or exclude certain views. Now, this toolkit does exactly that. Presents a single view on sex and gender that is radical and controversial. It does not reasonably accommodate other views, views that are arguably held by the vast majority of South Africans. From this viewpoint, the coalition finds the content itself disturbing because it marginalizes views and it promotes views and norms that are against the views and the values held by the vast majority of the parents of South Africa, especially those from the traditional cultural and faith-based communities, and then their understandings of sex and sexuality and relationships and gender, etc. It's also concerning because from the legal point of view, parents have the inalienable right to choose the kind of education that's best for their children. Parents are children's primary educators. And this inalienable right to choose what kind of education is best for your children includes the religious, cultural, and language basis of the education, and especially during the early years of schooling. Now, this toolkit is aimed at early childhood education, children aged 0 to 9 years, and those are obviously very formative years for children. So that's concerning. That's by not consulting parents, because this toolkit is already being implemented, and many parents probably are still unaware of it. How does that align with parents' right to choose the kind of education that's best for their children, and the religious background to that education, the cultural background to that education? And then the other thing is that parents were not consulted. That's very concerning. There's a legal obligation on the department to consult parents about the content of education. And even if the department argues that this is a teacher training material. Who are the teachers ultimately training? It sets a certain context and atmosphere and tone for the classroom. So it does affect children. So the coalition is concerned about that. And it is concerned that this toolkit is being implemented that, as I said, excludes, marginalizes views held by arguably the vast majority of South Africans. And so it goes in that sense against our constitution. Our constitution celebrates unity and diversity, not unity in conformity. And in that sense, it really does not tolerate or reasonably accommodate difference and create a classroom where all are welcome, which is ironic because that is one of the names of one of the main documents in the toolkit, all are welcome. But persons from the faith community and traditional cultural communities might ask, well, why are our views? This toolkit apparently does not welcome our views.
Yes, and I mentioned a bit earlier when I was discussing some of the content that, of course, one of the things that it does is it basically tells children that if your mum and dad have been teaching you, for example, they're just men and women, that's potentially harmful to you. So it actually has the potential to divide and push division between parents and their children. And given the fact that the overarching constitutional principle is what is in the best interest of the child. Obviously, it's very difficult to see how that could possibly be in the best interests of a child. And also to set up the conflict with potentially between parents and teachers. And that relationship is key because if parents don't trust what teachers are going to teach their children, then obviously they're not going to be as engaged as they should be in the education process. So that is really concerning. But Lisa, we had a couple of previous meetings. Maybe you could give a little bit of a update on the previous meetings for those who may not be aware of the fact that this is an ongoing matter and what the outcomes were.
Yes, certainly, Michael. So we first met with the department in December 2023, and then we had a follow-up meeting in March this year, March 2024. And at our first meeting, we presented a comprehensive position paper, 36 pages long. We clearly set out the legal framework of parental rights as the primary educators and, the best interests of the child and how parental rights and best interests of the child intricately connected. And then we also pointed out how the content of the toolkit is in conflict with parental rights in education. Especially where, for example, in the toolkit, teachers are advised to ask young children what are their preferred names and pronouns, what is their choice of toilet facility, or tell them things such as, you can be a boy or a girl or both or neither or something else altogether. And you can't tell whether a person is a man or a woman simply by looking at them, which, of course, as we've mentioned, parents have the right to raise their children according to their own religious beliefs and moral values. This is in conflict with that. And we set that out. And of course, our approach is not to, we recognize the equality and the inherent dignity of all human beings, however they identify or don't identify. But we also recognize the importance of parental rights and how parental rights is an intricate part of freedom of religion and also an intricate part and absolutely vital to the protection of best interests of children. So after our December meeting, the department responded in writing. It was a rather short response, and we felt that it really glazed over and did not properly respond to our comprehensive position statement. And we had the follow-up meeting in March. It was the 8th of March this year. And we were rather disappointed, I must say, perhaps even shocked and disturbed that the department basically dismissed our concerns, dismissed our requests, and it said it was in capital letters that they will in capital letters continue to roll out this program. And like I said, this was very disappointing because we had a well thought out response. Our response was within the context of the constitutional framework. It was in the context of recognizing that we have a diversity of cultures and peoples and belief systems, both religious and secular, in South Africa. And we think our requests and offered solutions were reasonable. that would actually help protect parental rights and education within the constitutional framework, but it was just a miss, and we found that very disappointing, to say the least. But Michael Azar now mentioned, as I said, the department said that they will proceed with this program. Can you tell us why, until now, has the department insisted that they will continue to roll out this program and not halt it?
Yeah, I think really that gets somewhat to the crux and heart of the matter, because it is evident from our understanding of the department's written response that they really have some bad misconstructions of what the law says and maybe what their responsibilities are. One of the things that they said in that particular response was that they believed that parents and children are somehow in this unequal power relationship with one another, as if, somehow the parents are the oppressors and the children are the oppressed, which is obviously absurd, because parents, by definition, have the best interests of their children at heart, and that is always going to be the assumption. But they said that they believe that they had the right to actually limit parental rights. They even quoted a particular legal precedent, which they, again, misconstrued, which they said gives them this right. Not that parents can't teach their values, but in their view, the DBEs, that is, they have the right to supplement parental views and values with what they call constitutional principles. And again, clearly, that was a very concerning issue. The reason that they gave for that, by the way, was that somehow by teaching little children that boys can be girls and girls can be boys, this will be an integral part of the strategy they proposed to reduce gender-based violence and femicide. But again, there's an absurdity there, because if you're teaching children at a young age that you actually can't tell the difference, and there actually is no difference between girls and boys can be girls, then how is that actually protecting women from potential violence if you don't even know who a woman is or what a woman is? And how is that going to actually prevent or reduce femicide, which by definition is the murder of a woman by a man on the basis of their gender? How is that going to help? What about safe spaces for women? Even the rights that women have fought so hard to win, for example, to have different sporting codes, how is that going to affect that going forward? So there is a level of absurdity. And the other thing which was very concerning was that there seemed to be the implication that somehow if you do hold as a parent conservative views and values on sex and sexuality and gender and so forth, that the very fact that you hold those and you're passing on those views and values to your children is somehow an encouragement to your child to become a bully and to bully those who maybe think or believe or feel differently. And obviously that's not the case at all. We've said many times that children who may be suffering from some level of confusion regarding their gender obviously need to have the utmost care and empathy and to be reasonably accommodated in the school system. That's what the law basically requires. But it was very concerning. And of course, we then pushed for another meeting with the department. And that was difficult to obtain. Of course, the elections came in the middle of it. We decided, even though this is a very serious issue, the coalition decided that they did not want to make it a election issue because that might have been an unfair bias. But obviously, once the election was over, a new minister was appointed. And we then started to press again for a meeting with the minister so that we could really make sure that she, in her new role, was aware of the issues. And so this coalition, and maybe just to briefly explain who this coalition of religious leaders are, we're talking about the largest faith structures in South Africa from across the spectrum of the different religions, and represented at these meetings by their most senior level officers. So we have, for example, TISA, the Evangelical Alliance of South Africa, represented. We have SACOF, which represents some 16,500 churches. Just those two organizations alone represent over 10, probably 11 million people. from the Christian community. And then you have the United Ulama Council of South Africa, who represents almost all the Islamic structures. That's about another 2 to 3 million people. And Nkululeko Yazizwe Association, who represent many of the African traditional spirituality groupings. And they represent some 10 million people. So you're talking about a meeting being requested by representatives of religious structures, literally representing millions of families, over 20 million people in total. And the coalition was formed really to make sure that the government, the Minister of Education particularly, understood the gravitas of the situation, the fact that this number of religious leaders, this number of religious groupings, the representation that they have actually have this as a high-level concern. It was really formed, the coalition, to address that and to bring that weight to bear. And of course, it did offer some solutions. We didn't go there in a spirit of antagonism or confrontation. We really went there to say that, we want to be part of the solution as the faith community. 4SA obviously was very much involved with setting the legal framework for it. But Lisa, maybe you can tell us at that meeting, which we had, which took place on the 8th of October, Tuesday, what solutions did the coalition propose to address, obviously, its concerns?
Yes, certainly, Michael. And maybe I can start by just putting a bit of a context. So as the coalition, desire is to explore how we can work together to add value, because we recognize that, the Department of Basic Education has a tremendous and a very important job to do, and they deal with very complex issues. But as the coalition, we do not believe that teaching a highly controversial and ideological view to children in communities that have deep cultural, traditional, and religious, spiritual roots can have a positive outcome. And as we've mentioned, we don't think that the toolkit is a solution to the very real problems of bullying and gender-based violence. It's not the answer to those issues, even though those are very important issues. And then there is the reality that there is simply no way of evaluating the consequences of exposing very young children to a value system and view of life that is that the toolkit specifically presents. And you've mentioned the potential of causing this division between children and their parents, and even teachers and children and parents and teachers. That trust relationships, those various trust relationships, are very important, and that cannot be in the best interest of children. So we propose various solutions. I think one that I would like to highlight first and foremostly is the establishment of a Directorate, Family Values and Parental Rights within the Department of Basic Education. And the purpose of this directorate would be to ensure that there's a true representation of the diverse views and values of the different communities in South Africa, the faith communities, the traditional communities, etc. When instruments like this toolkit, but also bills, policies, regulations, protocols, guidelines, advisories, you name it, when these are developed and implemented. So what this unit would do, or how it would look, is it would draw from the members of communities and organizations that are dedicated to upholding the constitutional rights of religious and cultural communities. Its composition should be diverse and a comprehensive representation of the religious and cultural values and ethics that form the rich tapestry of South African society. And obviously parents are part of that tapestry. And what it ultimately will do is that it's a positive recognition that the family is the natural unit and basis of society. This is also recognized in international law, which places a legal obligation on states to support and not intervene with or undermine the family unit. And it recognizes that families are the custodians of religious, cultural, and moral values and practices recognized by the community, and parents have the right to pass this on to their children. So yes, this unit will help ensure a diverse spectrum of views of South African families, and that this is actually reflected in the education system, so that we don't have a document coming in, a teacher training or any other document. But for example, we're talking about this toolkit that pushes one view to the exclusion or marginalization of others, and that undermines parental rights. And this, we believe, as the coalition, will actually help foster real respect for human rights and will create true social cohesion in South Africa, even reconciliation. And this unit will build a critical bridge to ensure that educational policies and content that is being developed and being implemented is truly inclusive and reflective of broad community values. There's some other requests the coalitions also had. For example, immediate moratorium on the rollout of the ECE Toolkit or its implementation in any part of the public school system. We know that it is being implemented in at least 4 or 5 provinces already. And there wasn't public participation, no meaningful public participation, which is, of course, a legal duty. We've mentioned it before in this discussion. So immediate moratorium until there has been meaningful public participation, until parents and other stakeholders, such as religious and cultural communities, are able to give their input, and it has properly been considered. And then we also ask things, for example, going forward, that there will be this opportunity when any new documents are developed, that there will be meaningful public participation. And we want to know what other work this Directorate in Social Inclusion and Equity is doing, so that we can see whether there are any other documents that are also of concern.
Yeah, no, that thank you. That was pretty comprehensive. And look, I think it would be true to say that the previous 2 meetings that we had, the one in December and the one in March, were not satisfactory. I think we were disappointed, as you say, by the meetings that we had and the outcomes thereof. But tell us, what was your impression of this most recent meeting? How was that? How were we received? And maybe let's have some of the outcomes of the meeting and the conversation that we had with the new minister, Siviwe Garube.
Well, compared to the previous 2 meetings, much more positive, I must say. The new minister came across as very open and very receptive of the concerns of the coalition, and we really appreciate that. We value that. And we are encouraged by what is a very, very positive engagement. The minister recognized that the religious faith and traditional spirituality communities, they are key stakeholders, they are key partners, and not for the very least because they represent a significant portion of South African society, but that it's a key stakeholder to involve in public education. And the minister noted, she expressed her appreciation for input, and she gave us assurances that she will read through all the documentation. We prepared a presentation especially for her, but also the documentation presented at the previous meetings and the DBE's initial response to our presentation, because as we said, she's a new minister. She was not yet the minister when those previous meetings took place. And the minister said that once she has read through these documents, once she has applied a mind, she will get a further legal opinion on this and provide us with a timeline. And that those will be the next steps going forward. We will also provide the minister with a summary of the legal framework, and yes, and we will have a follow-up meeting also to discuss what the outcomes were and see what her written response is, and basically to take it from there. But as I say, a very positive engagement, and we are encouraged that and trusting that there will be a more constructive outcome to this meeting than the previous 2.
Yeah, I'd just like to add in that I felt that there was definitely an open-mindedness and an open heart to what was being proposed as well. And I think very importantly, she's made a commitment that really what she's going to be bound by is the legal framework. And that's really all we've ever wanted. And we obviously are going to be doing our best as 4SA to present that as well and to summarize it clearly and succinctly. And she obviously will be looking for a legal opinion from her own department. But we are, I would say, quietly optimistic that we're going to get a different response from the one that we've received previously.
Yes, absolutely, Michael. And we're looking forward to that follow-up meeting and receiving the minister's response. But in the meanwhile, parents listening to this, concerned citizens, they might be thinking, but what can we do? Up until that point, what can we do now to make our voices heard? So maybe you can tell us more about that. What are the options for concerned parents and citizens?
Yeah, I think it's so important that parents understand very clearly, as hopefully we have enunciated in this video, that the law is firmly on your side as a parent, because you have this inalienable right to educate your children, particularly in the early years of their development. So there are a couple of things that you can do. Obviously, the first thing to do if you have a child in pre-primary and primary schools is to actually go and ask the school management or the school governing body, is this actually being rolled out and implemented in the school? You might be completely unaware of it. And I think also to make sure that it is clearly understood that there is no obligation on any school, any public school, to actually implement this training program in the pre-primary and primary school years. It is a teacher training program, but the school governing bodies are the ones that can actually decide, because clearly this affects the culture within which all teaching will take place. So that's a very important thing that you can do. And secondly, on the 4SA website, which is forsa.org.za, we have on the homepage an image where you can click. There are two buttons on the image. One will send you to more information. Again, check it out for yourself. Don't believe what we're saying. Actually go and check out for yourself what is actually happening. And then the other button is make your voice heard. And that takes you through to the Dear South Africa, a platform where in literally 2 minutes, you can summarize maybe what concerns you might have and hit the button and send a direct message to the Department of Basic Education for the attention of the minister. So again, very importantly in these issues, that parents don't just sit idly by and feel somehow helpless and marginalized. You have a voice, you have a say, make your voice heard while you can. But Liesl, maybe you can just wrap it up by telling people where they can get more information on the work of 4SA and how they can actually get involved with us.
Certainly, Michael. If you would like to learn more about 4SA and the work we do, you can visit our website. The address, again, is www.4sa.org.za. On our website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. That way you will get the latest alerts if there's some new development or important news about faith and freedom in South Africa. Our contact details are also on the website if you would like to send us a message. And then we're also on social media. You can follow our Facebook page, Freedom of Religion SA, or subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have many videos on matters that affect faith and freedom, and we'll discuss these matters in a little bit more detail.
Brilliant. Well, that's us all up for this week. We trust that you found this interesting and informative. And again, please do support Freedom of Religion South Africa 4SA. We are 100% dependent upon donations in order to do the work that we do. And we, I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, have done a very valuable work, and particularly in discovering and uncovering this issue and now helping to really push back against the ideological capture of pre-primary and primary schools with a single ideology. So get involved with 4SA. Please help us. Liesl, thank you so much for all the tremendous hard work that you do. And until we see you with next week's topic, have a very good day and God bless.
Good day. This is Nobukosi Zulu, legal advisor at 4SA. Remember to like and share this video and then click on the subscribe button to make sure you never miss our video updates on vital religious freedom issues.